Yes.
And we are live. I want to thank our advertisers, Concealment Solutions, Crusader Weaponry, New Jersey Second Amendment Society, the Firearms Safety Institute, and, of course, the Firearms Policy Coalition. Viewers, please, please, please go visit our sponsors. They do keep the show coming to you for free. So this is the second attempt at recording episode 328. We were able to get the Laura Carno interview done. Unfortunately, we weren't able to take that one live over YouTube. So catch our podcast for that. We're going to be going with our regular news, DGU, and other segments here in just a second. As soon as I figure out... Oh, no, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do this.
No, don't press that button.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Not that one either. Setting bandwidth, auto HD. Okay, yes. Looked like my view was a little grainy, and I just was wondering what the heck. But that's what it is. What it is. So, all right. Are we ready to roll out a open?
Sure. Roll out the open. Scroll.
Open, open, open. Get that open, rolling.
Get that podcast open.
All right. Starting in 5. Hi, and welcome to the Polite Society podcast presented by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We're recording this one live Sunday, May the 3rd, 2015. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse. And on tonight's show, we talk with Laura Carno about her latest post, No, I Will Not Shut My Pie Hole.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about the Baltimore riots.
I'm Gary Doherty, and in one of our DGUs, a homeowner uses a handgun to defend themselves after their home was burglarized for the second time in a week. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 328 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. Okay, let's go ahead and get right into it. Personal news segment. Gary, you're up first. What's been going on since the last time we've been on the air, man?
Did I mention the rifle last week? I can't remember now.
You did.
You did. You mentioned you had ordered one, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so waiting on that. Got the lighting in the safe. And that's about it. Nothing exciting. Thursday, I am going to a lecture by Sonal Shah, who, if you don't recognize the name, was part of the Obama-Biden transition team. She will be speaking about labor and employment concerns for employers' rights, requirements, and concerns about concealed carry law and how they plan for situations. So that's going to be a very interesting talk. I am worried that I will get emotional.
No, not you.
I am worried. So I'm practicing and thinking about it a lot.
So you and I thought that Darth Vader bit was just geeky. You know, it's like he's breathing on a oxygen rebreather. In fact, he was practicing square breathing to lower his anxiety level. He's really a nervous guy, right?
Yeah, if you see that scene when the helmet comes off, there's high blood pressure going on there.
Yeah, right. There's some serious issues.
All right. Anything else going on with you, Gary?
No, it's like I said, that's about it.
Okay. How about you, John? What's been up with you, man?
Well, I had a hearing exam on Monday. It was scheduled. It was my annual. About a week ago, I had been in a public library where they were testing a fire alarm. My ears had really been hurting since then because it was probably 140, 150 decibels.
Wow.
In a stairwell.
Ugh.
hard building. I mean, I was scheduled to have my hearing exam anyway. Um, and I do have tinnitus or tinnitus, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, or ringing in the ears. That is due to exposure to loud noise when I was younger. I did something stupid that was common back then. I shot without hearing protection. So now I have ringing in both ears and a high frequency dropout. And I'm sure there will come a time when I'm going to need hearing aids. It just is. And the reason I'm relating this is as kind of a warning to our listeners: wear your hearing protection all the time. Well, not when you're driving or anything, but when you're shooting, wear hearing protection. Even if you're hunting, there are hearing protection that will actually maybe let you hear that deer stalking underneath your stand better than your ears alone, and would still protect your ears. So protect your ears, or else you're going to feel like you're in a summer evening hearing crickets all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, in other firearm-related personal news, I finally weighed the lightweight AR I built. Without optics and without the backup rear sight, it comes in at 5 pounds 12 ounces. When I put those back on, I'm still only at 6 pounds 2.7 ounces. I just need to find the time now to take it to the range, sight it in, run a number of rounds through it. I'm very pleased. And so now, of course, I'm gathering parts now to make a retro-style AR, kind of the M16A1, and this AR building is addictive.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious to find out when you actually do get a chance to go out and fire the lightweight AR. There are a couple basic laws of physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering how, with a very, very light AR, how that's going to be if there's, I mean, let's face it, ARs are not monster recoil devices anyway, but I'm wondering if there's going to be a perceived increase in recoil when you shoot that.
I think there will be. Well, I should say I changed from the A2 birdcage flash hider to more of a compensator flash hider just because of that. And I probably could have gone with a slightly lighter pistol grip, but I used the Hogue because it has a better grip to it, more control. And I did both of those for that reason. I did shoot the very, very light one put out by Double Star when I was at the media day at the range at SHOT Show, and you feel a little difference. I mean, it is a little bit more whippy, you feel more recoil. Mm-hmm. So hopefully my combination will work out so it's no difference.
And the other thing I wanted to mention about, and this, you mentioned media day at the range. When I was there this year, I had, for the first time, I had a set of electronic muffs. And you can set those so that your hearing is better when you're wearing hearing protection than it is out. I could hear people, when I was out away from anyone firing, I could hear people walking up on me a lot farther back than I normally would. I was kind of amazed, and I honestly, if I were to be going out for any outdoor activity that involved being out where I would want to hear things, hunting or even just out doing bird watching or whatever, I would want to wear those because look, I'm a trucker. I'm around loud diesels constantly. B, I had a misspent youth with race cars and rock and roll. My hearing is not that great either. So, I guess I want to second your second what you were saying, both on protect your hearing. You cannot get it back. There's other than going to hearing aids, there's no way to get it back. Secondly, and I've had constant crickets since I was 16 years old. Secondly, is those hearing protection, especially the Howard Light automatic ear protection. Man, try it if you haven't. They are awesome. So
they're awesome and they're cheap. There's
Mm-hmm.
way more expensive versions out there. You can spend $100 or $1,000 for electronic hearing protection, but those Howard Lights you can Amazon whatever for $25, and they really do a good job.
I think I spent I didn't get a great deal. I think I spent like 30, 32, 35 on mine. Not a huge expense, but they really work. And if you're firing a 357 Magnum or a 44 mag or any of the big boomers, you can always go with double hearing protection and put a regular set of foamies on underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I noticed at the NRA convention, even Peltior, which typically makes a better quality, higher cost ear pro, they were still under $100, at least with some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I stand corrected. The price has gone way up on the Howard Lights. Now they're $50.
Okay,
Wow.
so Peltior's competing head to head then.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, I have a pair of Peltor and a pair of the Howard Lights. I thought I paid like the 30-ish for the Howard Lights and about 60 for the Peltor 6S.
Yeah. Huh.
Hey, John, how long is the barrel on your lightweight?
16.
Okay.
I didn't put the upper together. I had bought a lightweight Bushmaster upper used years ago, and then this just worked out to be the perfect fit for it.
Well, I guess Rob, you're up next, man. What's been up with you this week?
I happened to be in Los Angeles earlier in the week, and I dropped in and heard Alan Corwin speak. Alan owns and runs Broomfield Press. He's written many books on gun law. Well, he's not a lawyer, and he'll be the first to tell you he's a journalist. And he also has a great blog called The Page 9. He spoke at a group organized by Doris Wise Montrose. We've had her on the show. Her groups are Children of Jewish Holocaust Survivors and the group Jews Can Shoot. Alan spoke about his latest book, What to Do After You've Defended Yourself. That's certainly an interesting topic. We barely talk about it here. And the audience was very interesting as well. As you could imagine, some of them took him to hurt, some were alarmed by what he said, and some said the usual things like, well, drag him into the room, and everybody just turned their head and went, no, don't. Hey, also, Doris gave me a great hat, and on the back of it, it says, nothing says never again like a Jew with a gun.
That's perfect.
In less esoteric realms, I shot IDPA Friday night, and Saturday was back at the same range to mentor another group of about 20 doctors for their first shots program. Someone brought one of the FN-57 pistols, and it sounds like you're shooting a 50 cal. It is noisy, but it has very little recoil. It's kind of a game gun.
Did I misunderstand you? Did you say Alan said drag the body into the house?
No, Alan did not.
Okay.
I was saying no. I was saying the response of the audience was diverse. Some people said, "Oh gosh, it's really dangerous. You have to survive being persecuted by law enforcement." And everybody went, "Yeah, to a degree. That's not completely inaccurate." And then you'd hear the other kind of FUD statements by, people with more braggadocio than common sense.
Okay.
And you, Paul?
Well, this week has been a busy week for me. I, of course, did my normal 70 hours of driving in 5 days. Yes, that equals up to 14 hours a day. Got home on Friday, and I just a normal week for me. A little bit of dry fire. Susan isn't going to be with us on the show today. Her aunt and uncle are here from Washington. Had a great time talking with them. I only was able to spend a couple hours with them before I had to come home and get ready for the show. They are some pro-gun people out of Washington, and we had a great discussion on I-594, and
Interesting.
from some people that live there and have to go through all of what has to happen. And they're also very shy people and wouldn't come on the show. So, but yeah, I had a great time, and then I came home and got set up and everything. Got the audiobook. All the recording is finished. So it should be out. I'm thinking it's going to be a while because there are 34 chapters to this book. They are all recorded. All the recording. My Melissa, my actress that did the voice for the book, all her part is done. I'm editing now chapter 8 of 30.
Now you get to edit it. Been there. Oh my gosh.
You know, we're looking at this book is going to be about 26 hours of audio when it's all done. And we have a lot of podcasters that listen. And so those of you that do and edit your own stuff, imagine most of us have a somewhere between 30-minute and a 2-hour show. Imagine editing, 26.
50 half-hour shows. Oh!
Right. Yeah. So that's what's in store for me over the next several weeks. I do want to mention to the listeners that next week is Mother's Day. We're going to be doing a regular show on Mother's Day. I don't know if we're going to get any guests to show up. I don't think we have any scheduled right now, but we'll at least do a regular show. The week after that, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be doing training with Bob Main and Ben Branham. They're going to be up here in Sioux Falls, and so I'm going to leave the show in the capable hands of Rob, John, Gary, and maybe Rachel if she can make it back. I'm going to leave it in their capable hands. So that one, I don't know if it'll be live on YouTube or if we're going to be doing it on Skype or how they're going to be doing it. I'm going to leave it totally in their hands. I'm going to let them do it. So, and then before we go to break, I'm going to take a little bit of time, and I've got a little bit of a rant that has been building up, and this week's it's really come to a head. I had a friend and really a dedicated fighter for our rights post a video on my wall on Facebook. He asked if I knew who the person was that made the video he posted. The video was a single person doing an open carry demonstration on the sidewalk in front of the federal courthouse in Sioux Falls.
Ooh.
The video came in 2 parts. It was about 40 minutes long total. It never showed the face of the person who recorded the video. Now, I did not recognize the voice of the person at the time, so I replied and said that I didn't know that person, although that person was a bit of a, we're going to say on the air here, we're going to say jerk. I said something a bit stronger on Facebook. But and folks, I do try to keep the show family friendly, but it turns out I do know that person. They replied on Facebook, and let's just say the butthurt was a little strong. Let me go back. Let me take just a minute here to let everybody know how I feel about open carry. For many of you who listen a lot, this is maybe going over a bit of well-trodden ground, but I think it's really important that I go through this for anybody that may be new. Actually, let me start with, I'm going to go ahead and read a post I made to Facebook, and then we'll continue a little bit after that. The post starts off, I support your Second Amendment rights. I believe that you have the right to possess and peacefully use any weapon you can afford. This includes anything from the Ruger 1022 to the F-22 Raptor. I also support your First Amendment rights to say whatever you feel, to worship whatever God you believe in, and associate with whomever you want to. Now, both my hobby and my part-time business, this show, the Polite Society Podcast, rely and advocate heavily on both of those rights guarantees that the Constitution offers. However, if you're one of those that are being a jerk about your First and Second Amendment rights, doing some things that are hurting us, things such as open carrying in a manner that causes public alarm, carrying a rifle in a place of business, I'm going to give some leniency to those in Texas and other states where open carry of handguns is not allowed, or if you're making videos where you're egging the police on, hopefully to make just a YouTube celebrity out of yourself while using a fake name, you are hurting us, and you're hurting us badly. I use my real name both on Facebook and here on my show. I don't hide behind some made-up moniker. If you cannot put your real name to what you are doing, if you would not be proud to have your social media posts displayed to your parents, to your preacher, to your doctor, your children or your grandchildren, whether or not they agree with you, please, for the love of God, don't post them. A lot of people have friended me on Facebook because of the show, and thank you to all of you that have. Even if I haven't met you personally or I haven't interacted much with you, if you think that I might be referring to you, then it's possible that I am. I beg of you, please look at what you're doing and think to yourself, is what I'm doing going to alarm someone who may be neutral to our fight and make them think that the other side may be right? And that's the end of my Facebook post. I want to go back and say I do support the right to open carry. I myself open carry and did today open carry my handgun while I'm at home. I participated in organized open carry walks. If done correctly, open carry can be an incredibly powerful tool to help us. If done incorrectly, it can be a tool for the other side, for Bloomberg's demanding mommies, for the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, the Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, and others to point to and say, look at the lunatics they have. Even worse, it can and it will make the average citizen who votes and has a neutral stance to our side turn away from us. While you're open carrying, everything you do is magnified. If you're polite and respectful, if you're well-dressed and well-groomed, and if you inspire confidence in those around you, that helps us. If, however, you are a jerk to those that you interact with, you are untidy, unkempt, or most importantly, if you instill fear in those you are around, you are doing more damage than anything those demanding mommies or the Brady Bunch ever has. Again, I ask, if your actions could be seen to intimidate, please think twice about doing them. That's the end of my rant. Does anybody want to jump in and talk about that?
You're fired up because you've seen an example of what we talk about over and over. Every one of us here and all of our listeners are ambassadors for the right of self-defense. Are you a good ambassador who will appeal to the average citizen? Paul, you be the good cop, I'll be the bad cop. You're dressed neatly. You have flyers to hang out. You have a rifle slung barrel down over your shoulder, and you say, I'm here to advocate for the peaceful carrying of arms in society. I think it's a good thing, and I want you to be aware of politicians who support us and who oppose us. And I'm some slob in T-shirts, cut-off sandals, and I'm carrying an AR at Port Arms. Day and night difference.
Yeah, you're hurting us. I would also add, I would like to see, if there's going to be open carrying, especially of long guns, if you're going to open carry a long gun, do it in an organized group. Get more than just you out there. Get at least 3 or 4 of you, and do what Rob is saying. Get some flyers. Get make sure that people know this is not going to turn into a Sandy Hook. Yeah, because if somebody sees just one person who's maybe a little raggedy walking down the sidewalk with an AR, like Rob says at Port Arms, or what I call the low ready, folks, that could turn ugly in a hurry. I personally, if I'm out in public and I come up, I can see somebody in the distance, long carrying a rifle in front of them, I'm going to probably one of them that calls the police.
Isn't that about the equivalent of taking a concealed firearm and putting it to the low ready? I mean, is there a difference and I'm missing it?
Now, in my opinion, you can, I'll talk to Ben Branham when he's up here in a couple weeks. But I very much believe an AR at Port Arms with barrel down in front of you can be brought into play as quickly as a concealed carry. So, yeah, I don't see a difference.
All right, so we're talking about the appearance of a handgun out of the holster.
Mm-hmm.
is the same thing.
Yeah, I would say.
Why would you do that and pretend that you're trying to appeal and win over hearts and minds?
I don't do that, Rob. Thanks
No.
for
It's not all about you, Gary. Help me here. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that does wrap up our personal news and intro segments. We're going to go ahead and step aside to break here. Before we do, I do have 2 classes coming up. And one's actually just in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from when we record this, we're going to be wrapping the training up. So you've got about a week to get in on it. And I think we got 1 slot left open. If you want to get on the Bob Main, Ben Branham Beyond Concealed Carry Enhanced course coming up in Sioux Falls, go to handgunworld.com. And don't blame me if you waited this long and you don't get a seat, because by the time this goes out on podcast, it may already be gone. But check and see. There will be a waiting list if there isn't one. If all the seats do go. Also, coming up in August, middle of August, we've got Kathy Jackson coming back to do her cornered cat class, and we've got seats left available for that one. Email, if you want to get in the Kathy Jackson class, email Susan at politicsandguns.com. She's handling the sign-ups and all that for that.
Yeah, I've talked to Kathy, and we had her on the show a while back, and if you're on the fence on that one, just now that you can download in sections, go to the Polite Society Podcast website. You can download just the interview and just hear a little tiny snippet of the amount of knowledge this woman has, and you'll agree that what they're charging for the class it's a massive discount for the amount of information you're going to get from her.
I don't want to sound like I'm dissing, so to speak, Masada U. But if I could only, I've taken both the Masada U Group Mag 40 class, and I've taken Kathy Jackson's Corner Cat class. If I could only take one, of the 2 classes and not the other, if I was allowed 1 training class and that's it, it would be the Kathy Jackson class. That's how much I believe in what she's doing and how much I believe I got out of that class. So we're going to go ahead and step aside to break, and when we come back, we got news. We'll get to that news right after this.
Well, that was strong.
Thank you for the... Thank you for the humor there.
It wasn't...
What?
Just, you said it, and it popped into my head.
I thought...
Why are you asking me this? I don't do that.
What do you mean me? What? Were you the guy in the dark alley that saw me doing that?
Uh-huh. I'm so on the fence with open carry. It's
open carry of handguns. Like I said, I personally do it. I do it when I'm at home. And I walked around today in a set of I got a T-shirt on. I got my Black Mamba, or not my Black Mamba, but my Sidewinder Pro, and I've got a good-looking pair of shorts on, and everything's clean, and my shirt was tucked in, and I was openly carrying all day out in public today while I was getting my stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's powerful when people see normal people out doing normal things, armed and paying attention, not with their face buried in their phone, paying attention to what's going on. I believe it instills security,
right,
to those that are paying attention. Now, I'm going to say this as well.
I don't think that most of them are paying attention.
Most people never noticed. I have.
Sure.
In the time I carry today, I got a total of 0 comments about it, and in all the time I've been open carrying around Sioux Falls when I'm at home, I'll get maybe a comment a month or so.
Yeah.
Hey, how do you want to do the news?
We're going to read the stories, and then we're going to talk about them after.
Are we gonna alternate, or one person each? We'll each take a segment. How do you want us to work?
Yes, absolutely. Rob's going to read them all.
No, I want to. Let's alternate segments, and I want to take the first segment.
Ooh.
The first segment.
Yes.
Ooh, big shot. Oh, that's right. It's your show.
Jeez. Whatever those drugs are that help you get all verbal and talk a lot,
double with those?
It's working, Gary.
Yeah, I unfortunately I need the opposite. I need a filter.
Yes.
I need some kind of filter.
Not when we're on the air. Keep it going.
Okay, you ready? Yeah, don't be shy now. We're on. This is an audio podcast. Shy doesn't work.
All right.
That cute little blush, doesn't work over the podcast.
Aw, shucks.
Oh, shucks. Now, come on. Somewhere. Help.
Help you find a folder? It's the green one.
It's the green one. I thought we had...
the light green one, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. You ready?
Yep. I'm ready when you are.
I think I'm paying bills.
Okay, here we go. 5 seconds. And welcome back to the news segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Susan isn't here to read our news, so we're going to go ahead and take a crack at doing it ourselves. And I've got the first segment. So here we go. First story, leading the news, we have a kind of conflicting statements from Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rollins Blake. The mayor has said it. The mayor said the following. The mayor said the following in a press conference when things started to get a little bit ugly in her city.
While we tried to make sure that they were protected from the cars and the other things that were going on, we also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well. And we worked very hard to keep that balance.
Now, she got a little bit of criticism on that, and then she decided she never actually said that, and we were all just twisting her words.
I never said, nor would I ever say, that we are giving people space to destroy our city. So my words should not be twisted.
No, we did not twist your news, Mayor. This is a classic progressivism. She's going on as if nothing ever happened, making it up as she goes along. Now, I want to make a suggestion, Mayor Rollins Blake, that you mark the block around your personal residence as the place set aside for room to destroy. It sounds like a better balance than taking places that people have businesses where they worked hard to try and eke out a living to make a better life for themselves and setting that as a place to destroy. That's just kind of my opinion on that one.
Yeah, if we're gonna trash a neighborhood, we're gonna ask for volunteers?
Yeah.
So our next story, we're going to take a little bit of a side trip on this one. While I was perusing Facebook one evening, I came across a video that puts the police violence thing into perspective. I'm going to go ahead and run the audio from that video, and we're going to get to that right now.
Based on recent media attention, one might wonder, what's with all the police violence? Are the police out of control? Are there any honest cops left? As of 2012, there were 313,910,000 people living within the U.S. For that same year, the FBI projects that there were just over 670,000 sworn peace officers. This equates to being less than 2.5 peace officers for every 1,000 people. So our peace officers represent less than 0.25% of the population, and in the performance of their duties will come into contact with about 17% of the population, and then subsequently arrest less than 4% of the population. And that's assuming that no single person was arrested more than once that given year. Now, as excessive force complaints can come from anyone, let's actually focus in on the scope of officer contacts. So in a year's time, 670,000 cops had contact with over 53 million citizens. These contacts could be anything from being pulled over, issued a citation, given a warning, interviewed as a witness, requesting a service, involved in a collision, reporting a crime, witnessed a police action, victim of a crime, disabled motorist, consensual encounter, or even being arrested. Of all those millions of contacts, the Bureau of Justice Statistics last identified that 26,000 complaints were made due to excessive force. This is not quite half of 0.1% of all police contacts. Of those complaints, only 8% were sustained, having any form of merit or evidence. That'd be 2,080 sustained complaints, or 0.0039% of all law enforcement contacts. To put things in perspective, in the same time frame, 84,376 people in the U.S. reported being forcibly raped. 30,800 were killed in traffic collisions, and 14,827 were murdered. So in regards to true excessive force by the police, you are 7 times more likely to be murdered, 15 times more likely to be killed in the burning wreck that used to be your car, and 42 times more likely to be raped. Probably not by a cop.
Okay. Couple things about that caught my attention. First, they looked not just at deaths, but all charges of excessive force by officers. Secondly, they broke things down by contact. Now, I'm one that doesn't respond well to percentages, so I did some of my own math on the figures they presented. If 2,000 people are contacted in one form or another by police, one person will file an excessive force complaint. Of all the complaints, only 8% had merit. So, taking all those numbers and extrapolating them out, if the police were to contact 25,000 people, on average, only one complaint of excessive force would have any merit. That's a damn good track record.
How many customer service agents contact 25,000 people and get one complaint?
Very good point.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. You see people at their best and worst.
And quite often, police see people at their worst because they don't get that. Police don't show up for your bar mitzvah.
No.
They don't show up for your grandchild's christening. They show up when Bubba Joe when Joe Citizen or Joe Bad Citizen gets drunk and is beating on his wife. They show up when somebody has too much to drink and gets into a wreck going down the road, kills 3 people, and doesn't know where they are, yet they lived through the wreck. They see the absolute worst society has to offer, and yet only 1 out of 25,000 contacts is legitimately excessive force. I think they're doing a great job.
Paul, I want to add to that. I dug up numbers from a different source. There are 20 gang murders for every gun-related homicide that involves a policeman. Most of the policeman's interactions where he had to go to a gun, the phenomenal majority, since they're all seriously scrutinized, are later found to be justified self-defense. We can argue whether it's 1 part in 10,000 and it really ought to only be 1 part in 1,000, but the vast majority, and the police know if the gun comes out, they're going to write a report. If they pull the trigger, everybody's going to look at that shooting. They're 20 times more likely that the gangs are going to shoot you than the cops are going to shoot you, no matter what you're doing. I think that puts the real source of violence in our society into perspective.
Amen.
Do you want me to? Can I say more about Baltimore?
Yeah, let's. We just barely touched on it. Let's go a little bit more in depth. I know you got something written out, Rob.
Yeah, and I talked about it on my blog. If you research what's been going on in Baltimore for a long time, high taxes and serious business regulations drove businesses out of the city. Unemployment, of course, goes up once you drive the employers out. Addiction rose to record levels when people were unemployed. Fatherlessness rose as young men couldn't find jobs and start families. The people who still had jobs and would like to have lived in Baltimore left because of increasing crime. The price and quality of housing crashed, just as it had done in Detroit. And while all this was happening, the city, state, and federal governments poured huge amounts of money into housing and schools. Well, when you're essentially giving away housing to people who have no jobs, that further crushes the housing market and forces more people to leave before the price of their biggest asset is crushed. Now we had a black drug addict whose mother was a drug addict. He was injured by the mostly black police force in a mostly black city controlled by black politicians. People rioted and burned stores that were owned by Koreans. I mean, I'm sorry, government policies killed Baltimore. And now the politicians are looking for someone to blame. I think they'll blame racism and propose that police wear body cameras. Let's also ask the politicians to wear body cameras too, so that we can find out where all the money went that was supposed to do some good. Anything else is politics as usual.
Yeah, and let's get the technology's there. Let's put a camera in their offices. I mean, they're working for us, right? We should be able to monitor what they're doing.
I'd like it.
Yeah, we can listen to when they make, deals that they're not supposed to, shall we say.
Or do you think the server that holds that video data will get erased too?
I think it'd probably get a hammer taken to the hard drive.
I would like to say, though, that I do not want a camera in the Oval Office if Hillary gets in the Oval Office, Bill comes to visit, I don't want a camera there, really, no.
Yeah. Going back to Baltimore, I was just reading, there's a blog that we follow called Chicks on the Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about the Korean businessmen. Well, it's not all Koreans. This guy's name is Essam El Ghanem. I presume he's Arabic of some sort, who had a pizza place. And he said his mistake was he didn't get out before the rioters got there. Because as he made his way to his car, he got doused with lighter fluid, and they tried to set him on fire. Fortunately, it didn't. And, when a reporter asked him what he would do differently, he said, I'm going to get my weapons license and everything to save myself from the neighborhood. And I'm thinking, yes, but this is Maryland. That's not going to be easy, even if you are a business owner, even if you were attacked.
Yeah. No, they'll let him hang.
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate. I had, and for long-time listeners, you don't even have to be that long of a listener to the show. Back this past winter, we had a driver who had a regular run out to Baltimore every week, and he was injured, and I took his place for a while. Every week I was doing the show from Baltimore, right outside Baltimore Washington International Airport. I got in Sunday and started my delivery run on Monday. When this whole thing started blowing up, I kept saying to myself, I'm really glad I'm not on that run anymore, because where I was at was not really a safe place.
Well, Paul, it doesn't. You don't have to be in what you consider not a really safe place to have had the violence. I went to Baltimore a little more than a month ago. I stayed in the Hilton. I overlooked Camden Yards, the baseball stadium. I could see it through the window, my bedroom window in the hotel. I'm looking at demonstrators smashing a cop car, and it was right in front of the hotel, between the conference part of the hotel and the sleeping part of the hotel. This was considered a nice business area. We were 3 blocks from Inner Harbor, which is supposed to be nice. We were in a nice section. No, you have to be aware no matter where you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just let's and another. What is it? I think the last 40 years of Baltimore city politics have been controlled by Democrats. I for podcast listeners, well, really for everybody, because it didn't go live on YouTube because of technical difficulties. We talked with Laurel Carno. There are such thing as pro-gun Democrats, at least in her opinion, and there are Democrats that have done right for the gun rights. However, the 40 years of economic ruin caused by the Democratic Party and Maryland's gun control laws have brought this out. I mean, when was the last time we seen a? I don't see Phoenix erupting in riots. I don't see any. Let's see, Kansas City, Kansas, hell, Kansas City, Missouri. Back when Ferguson was going on, it stayed localized to Ferguson because you get too far out of there, guess what? You're in Missouri gun law territory. You don't see riots in places with strong protection for our rights because, quite honestly, if you mess with the wrong person, you could face really bad consequences.
You know, last time those areas probably had riots was 68 and 69. After the, and the same for most southern cities, 68, 69, the riots after the death of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., and then some the next year, probably not much past 1970, and we didn't even have good gun laws back then, per se, compared to what we have now. I just think business owners in places like Baltimore, small businessmen, they're going to have a hard time just protecting themselves, unlike somebody who would be in Raleigh, Charlotte, Atlanta, Miami, Kansas City, Phoenix, you name it, other than certain states with really backward gun laws.
Well, yeah, you talk about store owners. We know of one news story from Baltimore, a CNN reporter, the riot activity got too close. She ran into a store, and the store owner had a gun. And as the article reads, protected this reporter. So it's obviously a smaller segment of people that are still trying to protect themselves, but it's in the business. It's not walking down the street, and I don't know how one is safer than the other, or one should be less able to defend themselves than the other.
Yeah. I think we've covered that one pretty well. If anything does happen in Baltimore that really requires some attention, we'll certainly get that next week. But I think we kind of covered it for this week. So let's go ahead and move off to break. We, not surprisingly, have more news to come, and we'll get to that news right after this.
Well, as an aside, Rob brought up politicians and policies. Illinois is pushing a bill through right now that any government agency in Illinois that has over a $1 million budget will be required to have a website with their entire budget, including audits, on it.
Nice.
And it's a transparency bill, and I really think it's a good idea. I don't know, obviously most people have their head in the sand and won't go look at it, but it does allow for all those FOIA requests to be not necessary because that information is available publicly. It's going to be very interesting.
Yep.
Who wants to read this section?
I'll do it.
Okay. Are we ready to take off?
Put the reading glasses back on
Okay.
after cleaning them. Yeah. Do you want me to? You want to bring it in, or do you want me to bring it in?
Go ahead and bring it in. And we are rolling now.
Hi, and welcome back to the news segment of the Polite Society podcast, brought to you by the Firearms Policy Coalition. There are several myths about gun control. The first is that waiting periods save lives. A waiting period is the delay between purchasing a firearm and taking possession of it. It has been called, quote, a cooling off period that could stop impulsive actions. Now, that doesn't make sense if the buyer already owns a gun. That is what a federal judge said in California, but California politicians appealed the judge's decision anyway. One Wisconsin lawmaker finally had the courage to state the obvious about waiting periods. Wisconsin Senator Van Wangard served as a traffic investigator and graduated from the Racine Police Academy. He said waiting periods don't work. Studies backed him up. Waiting periods don't change the overall suicide rate or homicide rate. Some studies found a decrease in violence, while other studies found an increase in violence associated with waiting periods. The results hinge on a critical distinction. Are we disarming a violent criminal or a potential victim? The proposed change in Wisconsin law eliminating waiting periods goes to the Wisconsin Assembly and then, hopefully, to Governor Scott Walker for his signature.
I would say if that thing does make it to Scott Walker, it most certainly will get signed, especially with him potentially running for president. He's going to want to make sure gun owners are on his side, at least early in the run.
I think you're probably right.
Well, and given the crazy laws they keep passing in California, it's nice to see people getting more liberty to act responsibly in the rest of the country.
Well, it's it's about their safety. It's about being able to protect yourself. And waiting to protect yourself does not make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Now, does Illinois have any waiting period?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so, but I wasn't sure. Obviously, California does.
Yeah, we're 3 days handgun, 1 day long gun, which makes, again, no sense. What difference does that make?
Yeah, I'm a young newly single female whose abusive boyfriend just got released from jail, and there's a restraining order that got placed today, so maybe that'll last the 3 days until I can get a handgun to protect myself and my kids.
Well, also the gun prohibitionists like to say, well, we need to start counting suicides. So a person who wants to commit suicide is buys a gun. They're going to wait, oh, I can't kill myself with a shotgun. I'm going to have to wait for a handgun. Please. They're going to kill themselves. They're going to find a way, as sad as it sounds.
Well, that argument has been proven false over and over again when they compare the suicide rates of other industrialized nations that don't have the firearm ownership level that we do.
Can you say Japan?
Yeah.
Among others. I mean, the studies go on and on. It's a feel-good BS thing to say, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, I looked at the numbers. There was a slight shift in the ages of people who committed suicide, depending on whether they had waiting periods or not. But the overall rate didn't change.
Right.
And let's face it, I mean, if somebody wants to commit suicide, they're gonna commit suicide.
It's really hard to stop.
Yeah. I mean, does a firearm make it quicker? It does. I'm not gonna lie. Does walking in front of a bus just as effective? Yes, it is. I don't know of a place around where there aren't high places you can jump off of. There's a lot of things you can do to commit suicide. Do I think it's a noble thing to try and stop suicide? Yes, I do. I think it's anybody taking their own life is a tragedy. However, taking away our liberties to do it, I think, harms us more than helps us.
Well, you brought up a real good point. I mean, there is a lot of jumping off of parking garages in Vegas. You know, there's a lot of despair in that city for certain reasons, and nobody's suggesting we only build 3-story high parking structures. There is, if somebody wants to, this is America. This America was founded on people making things happen in the face of adversity. And it doesn't change when people want to end their life. If they want to, they will find the way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's too bad they can't turn that energy towards improving things instead of giving up.
Yeah. John, what's our next story?
Well, we're going to continue on with gun control myths. But this time it's about background checks. Making honest gun owners re-register their firearms is somehow going to stop criminals from getting a gun. Would it stop car theft if we had to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles so I could drive your car? Mandatory background checks were proposed in the Oregon legislature. Background checks are already mandatory in Washington State, so we can see if they are effective. Despite their gun prohibitions, the impossible happened this week in Thurston, Washington. A high school student brought a gun to school and started shooting. He was tackled by a teacher and no one was injured. Thank God. The student was 16 years old, so he couldn't own a gun. The student was on probation, so he couldn't touch a gun. Thank goodness Washington State has mandatory background checks, so the student couldn't take someone else's gun. Oh, but he did. Detectives say the student wanted to commit suicide by cop. It looks like gun prohibition doesn't work, but that won't stop bigoted anti-rights politicians.
Amen. Amen.
And continuing on with...
Well, and you know what's amazing? John, let mini rant. The Washington politicians will say, oh, of course prohibition failed. We need more prohibition. Really? Never mind.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that story doesn't really need a lot of... Actually, that was written up perfectly by Charlie Foxtrot. I mean, here's all your logic shot down right in the article for gun prohibition, gun registration, all that. You're wrong. It just doesn't work.
And there was another, I don't know if it's coming up later in the news or not. There was another story coming out of Washington, D.C., where the Capitol Police, and we may have even, now that I think about it, we may have even talked about it last week. There were 3 firearms by Washington, D.C. Capitol Police that have been left in.
Oh!
Mm-hmm.
One of them found by children. And another thing we get from the other side of the argument is only police and military should have guns.
Because they're the only ones that are trained.
Right. And yet these trained professionals left their handguns in the bathrooms.
Well, let's not make too much light of it, guys. The fact is, humans are not perfect. They all make mistakes. I don't care how much training you have.
Right.
Granted, the 4 of us have had more firearm training than most police officers, maybe all. I mean, except for the ones who train outside of their department. So, but people still make mistakes. They still are not perfect. You cannot legislate perfection.
Well, and the good news is most children have enough common sense, and we can help them by gun-proofing our children. Stop, don't touch, go get an adult.
Yeah.
The area, yeah. Eddie Eagle, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't legislate that.
No.
All we can do is do this show, talk to the listeners, talk to our friends, talk to people we meet on the street, and say, look, this is what you need to do. I think Masada makes the point of no child has died in a fire in a school, and they have fire drills. They talk about it.
Right.
They plan for what's going to happen. And that's what we need to do. And we're still not perfect. We still have to make those efforts and talk to kids, talk to each other, talk to adults, make sure everybody is doing their best to be responsible, but they're going to make mistakes, and you can't legislate that.
Moving on. In New York State, any pretext is good enough for another firearms restriction. Now an Amish man is suing New York because of the state's gun laws. New York requires a background check whenever guns change hands. The background check requires photo identification card. And here's the rub. The Amish don't have photo identification on religious principles. So now they can't buy or sell guns in New York. Tell me again who New York laws are protecting us from? From the Amish?
It's going to be another drive-by buggy shooting.
It's like, was it clop, 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 boom, 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 clop, clop, clop?
Yeah, wow. I think of anybody that if I could think of one group that would be, I can think of a lot of groups that would be really, really safe to just totally remove any regulations around firearms with, and the Amish are certainly among them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the only reason this man wanted a firearm was to go hunting.
Yeah, and it's something that when they go hunting, they're really going hunting for food.
Oh, yeah. And the Amish historically have been an anti-war, anti-violence, peaceable religion. The reason you don't see mustaches on Amish men is because mustaches are militaristic in their opinion.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of somebody that has a goatee, that's kind of surprising, but
Yeah, well. But also New York State also has some of the fastest growing Amish population because there's good farmland there.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, moving to a state next to New York, Vermont, Bloomberg's anti-gun groups were pushing for mandatory background checks each time you took possession of a gun. They spent almost $138,000 promoting this legislation. Pro-rights groups spent only 20 cents for every Bloomberg dollar, and the pro-rights groups won. There are no mandatory background checks in Vermont. That took work from Vermont gun owners. Well done.
amen.
Amen.
All right, well, we have used up another segment, and we've still got more news to come. So everybody hang on. We've got more news. I think Rob's going to read the news next time, so we'll be back for that right after this. And I'm ready to push the button whenever you're ready, Rob.
We have a ton more news to get to.
I've been intentionally not saying that.
I know you have.
Hey, Gary, since I'm reading it, you want to put in the comment I put at the back?
You put something, what? Huh? What? Where? Huh?
Pick up. Read the show notes, dude. Seventh Circuit. I
Yes.
just gave you a comment. And
I know you guys I don't make enough comments on my own. You guys give me some.
yeah, and I'm bragging. I wrote that article, not Dan.
Okay. All right, you ready?
Ready?
Rolling.
Welcome back to yet another news segment on the Polite Society podcast powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is about the Seventh Circuit Court when they upheld an assault weapons ban. On Monday, the court upheld Illinois City's ban on so-called assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. This ruling specifically dismisses the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and recent case law. Instead, the decision relies upon the presumed feelings of the public. The majority of the three-judge panel held that, and I quote, if a ban on semi-automatic guns and large-capacity magazines reduces the perceived risk from a mass shooting and makes the public feel safer as a result, that's a substantial benefit, close quote. In other words, if some of the public can be convinced that the ban could make them safer, it's okay. Facts be damned. It's hard to imagine a more incoherent legal justification. In his dissenting opinion, the third judge on the panel wrote that the ruling is, quote, at odds with the central holdings of Heller and MacDonald, that the Second Amendment protects a personal right to keep and bear arms for lawful purposes, most notably for self-defense within the home, close quote. The issue will almost certainly go before the Supreme Court at some time. For the citizens of Highland Park, Illinois, and for the rest of the nation, we can only hope it's soon.
You know, I read the story and then said, why do I have the song Feelings running through my head? You know, feelings, nothing but feelings. Well, I can't sing, so. But I do have a link to the song in the show notes.
You're right, you can't sing.
Two judges sided with the politicians to give them more power. Judges say all it takes is a good-sounding headline to justify disarming the public. The uninformed public will feel safer after they read the political spin.
You know, it brings up fascinating. Suppose I wanted to, since we're talking about Illinois, there are various contractual obligations with public employees. Well, if the public felt safer if they abrogated those contractual obligations, would that be appropriate?
You know, let me take this at a little different angle. We reported last week that 63% of the public say that having a firearm in the home makes
them feel safer.
Their home is safer. So could we repeal this on the fact that the judge just wasn't paying attention?
Well, okay, let's turn it around. No, let's take the judge at his word. We can now require firearms ownership because 63% think that a gun in the home makes them safer.
Yeah, it makes them feel safer. Yeah. So the majority's feelings rule. It's dangerous either way you go. You know what I mean? I'm not advocating for making every person own a gun. Please don't get me wrong. We were being facetious about that, but it's a good point to. We're just making the point that just because of feelings, that's not a basis for law.
No.
This next article. Oh, I'm sorry, Gary.
Let me just point out this was what happened was when the concealed carry law went into effect. They also, in addition, included in that law was that no firearms-related law can be established by any home rule community after X date, and it was a weird gap. It was the day it was from the day it was like within 10 days of it being signed into law, and the lieutenant governor, I believe, sent out a letter to I can't remember if it's 100 or 200 home rule communities in Illinois and said, this is your last chance to
get it done, huh?
Get it done. And this was when Highland Park enacted this law. And once again, obviously rushed. Nobody thought about it. So moving forward, since July of 13, no home rule community can create any gun laws. They have to go through Springfield. They have to go through downstate Illinois. So I just find it interesting that this is one of those ones that was rushed through in a big hurry when there has never been a death by a so-called assault rifle in Highland Park.
Gary,
So-
you remember when you were a kid and you'd play this game, snapping your fingers, and the guy goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Frightening away all the elephants." The guy goes, "There are no elephants." See how well it works?
Exactly. Right. Feel good. Yeah. So this law created a ton of criminals. Highland Park is an affluent neighborhood. A lot of people that do that kind of sports shooting are own ARs. And it's funny, once again, enforceable. How? I don't think anybody's sold their guns that are in their gun safes in Highland Park. They just made them all criminals. No, we'll see.
This next news segment is a little bit personal. I got to talk with Dr. John Lott at the NRA convention. Let me add a little bit. I got to listen when John Lott spoke. It's not, when a man knows that much, other than "Hi, how are you doing? What are you looking at?" Then you be quiet and listen, because you really don't have that much to say. Nor do the anti-gun groups. The research director for Bloomberg's AstroTurf group, Everytown for Gun Safety, recently refused to debate gun law researcher Dr. John Lott. While we can't blame Bloomberg's mouthpiece for being chicken, Dr. Lott is a force of nature with facts and statistics. The Bloomberg public relations manager's refusal to talk face-to-face is telling. Antis just don't like when we have the facts on our side. C-SPAN invited both gentlemen to discuss a recent Pew Research study that found more Americans now think protecting gun rights is more important than controlling gun ownership. Everytown's Mr. Acorn, that's really the guy's name, Alcorn. Mr. Alcorn declined to appear at the same time as Dr. Lott, and resorting to personal attacks to explain his refusal. Alcorn was allowed to appear after Dr. Lott spoke, completely eliminating any possibility of give and take. Lott said he was disappointed that someone from Everytown wasn't willing to discuss the Pew Research findings. The Pew study showed that Americans who had once worried more about crime and favored strict gun control now wanted no more laws or even looser firearms restrictions. Quote, "In short," said Lott, "we are at a moment when most Americans believe crime rates are rising and when most believe gun ownership, not gun control, makes people safer." Close quote. Quoting the Pew poll, "Every country in the world that's banned guns has seen an increase in murder rates." Oh, that was Dr. John Lott, sorry. Lott is president of the Crime Prevention Research Center and the author of More Guns, Less Crime: Understanding Crime and Gun Control Laws. Lott said that with more stories about defensive gun use being distributed in the news media, people are finally catching up to the research on the issue. He reiterated that predictions of gun control advocates have never come to pass. Spreading the word of lawful defensive gun uses is a big part of what we do here on our podcast. Guess we're helping make a difference.
When I very first started the show, I put out an open invitation to anybody to debate. I'm certainly no Dr. John Lott. I wouldn't even put myself close to his category. From time to time, I will still send out emails and messages inviting people to come on the show and present the other side and have a discussion. And I have never even gotten a reply.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna, Paul.
No.
Don't schedule him in on the podcast.
No, it doesn't mean I'm gonna stop trying.
Okay.
I'll continue, and for anybody that knows anybody on the other side, if they're willing to come and talk, and I promise it will be a fair and honest debate, but it will be a fair debate, meaning I'm not going to let them just spew their opinions and not have to respond to facts. They will have to respond to facts, but I'll give them all the rope they want to hang themselves with. I'll let them talk.
Well, okay, Paul, that's a perfect segue to our next article.
Wait.
Oh, okay, Gary, interrupt me again. It's okay.
You interrupted me. I wasn't done talking about that. I was just going to say that it really makes me sick because every time John Lott is on, they attack him personally. When he was on with Piers Morgan, every time I've seen him on a show where he actually did debate somebody and presented facts and actual information, they just attacked him as opposed to who is it? Alan OJ's lawyer. What was his name?
Not Dershowitz.
Yeah, Alan Dershowitz attacked him and said that his results were junk science. Alan Dershowitz and John Lott, same show, attacked him, said junk science. That's the best he could come up with for his facts.
That's called an ad hominem attack.
Yeah, well.
I wonder if we can get Shannon on the show.
I would actually pay $3 for that to happen. I got $3 left in my wallet today. I would mail that to her just for her appearance.
And she didn't have to have her armed bodyguards because it would be.
You're covered, dude.
Yeah.
Why don't you write the check out like they did on Saturday Night Live when he was trying to get the Beatles? Just write the $3 check and post a picture of it on Facebook. This check I have made out to you, Shannon Watts. All you have to do is come off my check.
I'll figure out a way to cover up the account number, and I might just do that.
There you go. I apologize for interrupting, Rob. Please continue.
Michael Moore relies on the Second Amendment. Yes, big screen fabulist, virulent anti-gunner, noted hypocrite, and left-wing barking moonbat, Michael Moore may actually be supporting Michelle Obama's claim that chronic obesity can lead to early onset senility. Very early Thursday morning, the big chunk took it to Twitter to demand the immediate release of every African American in prison for drug or nonviolent offenses. For his next belly flop into insanity, Moore imperiously demanded that all police instantly disarm. Oddly enough, Moore justified that stupidity by noting, quote, "We have 1/4 billion Second Amendment guns in our homes for protection." Close quote. Although that's true, that's very odd reasoning from someone who wants the public's firearms seized at gunpoint by the police. However, apparently even that blind pig can find an acorn of Second Amendment truth once in a while. Go to bed, Mr. Moore. You're drunk on yourself. Who has the gun quotes, Paul?
I'll go ahead and take this, although I got to say, Charlie Foxtrot, man, he writes up a lot of the news reads we do on the segments. Good job. that Michael Moore, that was written really well. This week's gun quote comes from Upton Sinclair, and the quote is, "It's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it." So that's our gun quote. We're going to go ahead and step aside to break. When we come back, we've got an interview with Jeff Street. He's a listener. We're going to say why we interviewed him for the interview. It's really cool. And then we've got an interview with Laura Carno. So we're going to go to the break. We'll get you those interviews, and then we'll be back for DGUs. So hang on, everybody. We'll be back with all that right after this.
I have to tinkle.
I need to go get a soda, so why don't you tinkle? I'll grab a soda, and since my refrigerator's nowhere near your bathroom, I think I'm safe.
This is more information than I need.
I have a very old office chair in the studio here, and it's so old. It's a pneumatic chair. It's adjustable by height, by air. You pull the lever, and it goes up or down. Well, it's over time, it will sink down, even when you haven't touched the lever. But it's a comfortable chair, so I'm debating. I'm going to go to Lowe's, Home Depot, or heck, maybe even the Walmart. I want to get a cheap vice grip and just move the chair all the way up, which is where I normally set it. Take that vice grip and clamp it down so that the metal part, it can't sink, and just make it permanently tall. Gary, do you want to read DGUs, or do you want somebody else to do it?
Oh, all right. Yeah.
All right.
I'm cool. I'm hip. I'm having him now. It's wild.
Okay. We got a bunch of DGUs this time.
Ton.
We got a ton. Yes, we do.
Push the button, Paul.
Let me get back up to the top of the show notes. Just a minute here.
We're not near the top. We're near the bottom.
Give me the top of the DGU segment here.
Oh, guys, before we start, do we want to list the bad examples? Hi, don't do this.
You know,
We can do whatever we want this time, but as a general rule, I've tried to not point fingers at people doing dumb.
I don't
I mean,
listen. I don't listen to them anymore. Just to be very honest. But before I did the show and when I first had started the show, I listened a lot to the gun dudes.
Yep.
And they do a good guy with a gun, or our version of a DGU. They do one of those, and one
Misfire awards.
Misfire award. Yeah. I want to call it idiot with a gun, but misfire is what they actually call it. I don't know.
Okay.
Part of me says we need to be promoting what is good, and part of me, but I can also see the other side where we need to lead by example, and when we point out the examples of bad, I don't know. I'm kind of open to both sides.
Okay.
Just so long as we don't get into the thing like the truth about guns or like stupid gun owner type stuff.
Yeah. I guess what I would like to do, and even the one last week where the lady, or I don't know if it was last week or the week before, lady shoots X, doesn't put the shotgun down, turns around, gets shot by cops. That one was kind of on the edge for me, simply because, I thought it was important because it allowed us to say, hey, when the police show up, you really do need to put the gun down. But let's do it this way. If there's something to be said, if there's some education that can come out of it, let's include it. If there's not,
yeah, there you go.
Then if there's no educational that can come out of it, then why are we discussing it? So I guess it's kind of what I see. Gary, you ready?
So we're starting below the blue. Is that where I'm starting to read?
Starts off with the news media won't call it offensive gun use.
Yeah. Okay. That's right. Okay. I didn't know if you wanted to do the blue or not. That's all. Just and
yeah, no blue.
Welcome back to the polite.
Let me start just a second. jumping gun. Ooh.
It's so
All right.
hard to keep him happy, you know that?
I'm very happy. Whee!
Rolling.
The news media won't call it a defense. Oh, I got to start the thing. Take two. Welcome back to the Polite Society podcast. This is our defensive gun use segment.
Powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition.
Oh, take three. Welcome back to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our defensive gun use segment, and the first story comes from Baltimore. The news media won't call it a defensive gun use, but we saw it in Ferguson, Missouri. We saw it again this week in Baltimore, Maryland as well. We saw stores smashed, looted, and burned during riots. We also saw store owners protect their businesses by standing there with a firearm and with no shots fired. A Baltimore Sun reporter left his Crips gang member protection and was maced by a looter, demanding his cell phone. The attack was stopped when the reporter ran to a store owner who had a shotgun. More guns, less crime.
Amen.
And you know what's interesting? Lots and lots of our listeners saw that same footage. I think our listeners were one of the few people to draw that conclusion.
And we got at least two people. I'm pretty sure Anthony Lucapo and I think one other emailed us that story. Yeah, that's out there. At least our side is noticing.
Mm-hmm.
Next, an East Knox County, Tennessee homeowner was startled awake early Wednesday morning by the sound of breaking glass. From his bedroom, the homeowner saw an intruder climbing through a living room window. The owner fired once, and the robber fell backwards. Police found the perpetrator dead on the porch. The late James Melvin Vinson had accumulated an extensive criminal record in his 40 years, including multiple theft and drug charges. At the time of his final crime, he had 2 outstanding warrants for theft and for violating the parole that put him back on the street once again. Mr. Vinson was the very definition of an outlaw, largely unrestrained by the legal system. The homeowner is not expected to face charges. Under Tennessee's Stand Your Ground law, the man was within his rights when he used a gun to defend his home and his family.
I'm presuming it's actually more of a castle doctrine, but I think that's correct.
Yes, sometimes those two terms are mistakenly used
Interchangeably.
Thank you.
But here, look at this. Here's a man who has a huge record with the criminal justice system. It failed over and over and over and failed to protect the citizens. And here's a man who saw someone breaking into his home and protected himself. If you have to give awards for efficacy, it goes to the man who was armed.
Mm-hmm. I hate that the guy had to defend himself, but people of Tennessee, another reason, this is going to sound really cold, and I'm sorry, but people of Tennessee, one more good thing about this story is this person's not going to be clogging up your prisons and taking tax money to take care of them anymore.
With rights come responsibility. A North Carolina man failed to use his rights responsibly in a shoplifting incident at a store. A man ran from the Beasley Power Equipment store with a pilfered chainsaw.
I'm sorry. In California, we don't shoplift as many chainsaws maybe as they do in North Carolina.
There's a lower incidence? Okay. The thief jumped into a vehicle with two others while being pursued by the store owner's son. They sped off after the son brandished the pistol and ordered them to stop. 2 shots were fired at the departing vehicle and the driver was hit in the head. The store employee reported those facts to a 911 operator along with an admission that he had seen no firearm. Their conversation, of course, was being recorded. Our DGUs usually show the proper life-saving use of firearms. For educational purposes, we do not comment when their use could have been better. As such, we must point out when someone is legally and morally wrong when employing a weapon. Most states hold that firearms can only be used in the defense of oneself and others. A fleeing thief is simply not a danger to the CCW holder. Only a few states allow deadly force in defense of property. North Carolina is probably not one of them. In any case, a chainsaw cannot be equated with human life. The pistol owner simply should not have fired in that situation. He should have been a good witness and reported the license plate numbers to the police. The driver has been hospitalized in critical condition. His 2 Confederates charged with felony theft. At this time, the shooter is under investigation by the district attorney. The shooter and his business will almost certainly face civil lawsuits. Self-defense classes, like Masada Abub's Mag-20, would have certainly made that mistake less likely.
Well, I can actually say that North Carolina law probably is not. North Carolina law allows you to use deadly force when you're facing the imminent possibility of severe bodily harm. We also define it that if somebody comes into your house at night, that's prima facie evidence that they intend severe bodily harm. In this case, no. I know he was probably just trying to stop the North Carolina chainsaw massacre, but he was wrong. And I'm afraid he may face not just civil charges but criminal charges as well.
I'm going to say in almost every circumstance, and certainly not in every circumstance, I'm going to say get to a Masada U group. They cover it in the Mag-20. If you only do the Mag-20 classroom, get to that. But in almost every circumstance, if somebody is retreating, don't shoot. If they're retreating, you're not in any danger. There are circumstances, it's gone over in the Mag-20, I will not go over it here. There are circumstances where you are obligated, morally and sometimes legally, to shoot a retreating felon. However, this is certainly not one of those cases. If they were coming at the guy with the chainsaw and the chainsaw was running, oh yeah.
Oh, that'd be fine.
Yeah, if somebody who's used... Side note, did you guys see Grant Cunningham on Facebook posted a picture of a monster chainsaw?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Yes.
In that case, if somebody's coming at me with one of those babies, I don't care if it's running or not. I think I can make a case that I was legitimately in fear for my life. But yeah, retreating after a shoplifting incident, and probably the thing was in a box and didn't even have the chain installed. Yeah, there's no threat to life there.
What you said coming at you, whether it's running or not, they're coming at you with a weapon. If somebody's coming at you, they're coming at you, you may defend yourself. Or did I misunderstand what you meant?
No, I guess what I'm trying... the chainsaw, just as a practical manner, the chainsaw is a much more deadly weapon when it's running. If you're hit with a chainsaw when it's not running, There's some sharp points you could get a little bit of a cut. I don't know. It'd be case by case basis. But what I'm trying to say, well, look, my major point was person in a car running away, crime done. They're trying to escape. There almost certainly was not a fear for a life there.
Right. Yes, and it is almost 100% likely this is an untrained individual.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who has been through the training knows, and it's something that we think about all the time. I assume I think about it all the time. I think about it in every situation that I'm in and every situation that I hear about. How am I going to handle it? How am I going to control myself? How am I going to know when to flip the switch and stop? And so you have to, the training lets you set up the proper mindset for dealing with these situations, I think.
Mm-hmm. And let me say one more thing here. Training will not guarantee that you're going to do it right every time. There is no guarantee you're going to do it right every time. If you're looking for an absolute 100%, I'm never going to do it wrong, don't carry. The training doesn't guarantee that. It gives you the tools to reduce the possibility, but there are no guarantees in life.
Well, right, and that's what I'm saying is that the training gives you the knowledge to, I guess, properly evaluate these incidents as you hear about them. So you're running through these potential scenarios through in your head. So when if it hopefully never happens, but if it ever happens, you have thought about every or as many possibilities as you can think of. So when it happens, you have at least thought about most of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Gary, I think you're doing something really wise. You're planning not only, as your training has indicated to you, you're rehearsing. I'm in a room where multiple exits. I don't see anything right now. Life's wonderful. But if something went, if a threat were to emerge, what are my options? And you're also saying, if I had to use deadly force, when would I have to stop? You're practicing those decisions. I think that's great training.
Thanks, Rob. I think most of us who go through some sort of training have the mindset to think about that. The big one that pops in my head is the incident in the parking lot where it was an elderly man was being hit by what turned out to be relatives.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, I don't think about it every waking moment, but it still runs through my head. There's a situation where multiple people were beating on an elderly man. Wow. You tell me that tiny bit of information, I'm in. I'm all in. Now there's more information. Oh, they're related. Oh, they left before the police got there, and everybody called the police about the guy with the gun, not the fight. How am I going to handle that if it ever happens to me? It's a big deal to me, and I think most people think about it that have been through some sort of training.
I would agree. What's our next one, Gary?
In the warped world of the criminal, they can come to feel that they own something merely by desiring it. This can lead to repeated, seemingly improbable attempts to possess the thing. This may be what happened to a California homeowner this week. In the normally peaceful Pittsburgh, California neighborhood, a homeowner shot and killed 2 home invaders Friday evening. This was the second time in a week that their home had been burglarized. In the earlier incident, 4 people had been arrested. At this time, it is not known if the 2 deceased were somehow related to the earlier incident. A neighbor wondered if there was a connection between the 2 home invasions. There's no way of knowing, he said. They broke in and ransacked the place, and maybe they saw something they liked and came back. If I was in the homeowner's position, I would have done the same thing, he said.
And not a whole lot to talk about on that one. Yeah, certainly if somebody's breaking in, you know, if you've broken it, let's take this from the criminal's point of view, not so much if somebody breaks in and they're coming back. How? Not so much from the criminal's point of view, but you would have to think as a criminal. Okay, I broke into this house less than a week ago. Do you think maybe the homeowners might be a little more alert, looking for me not to do that again? Do you think the criminal might think, gee, this might be a little bit more risky than waiting a while? This is unfortunately a case where what does Masada Ayub say? A poor case of selection.
Well, I'm gonna turn it over, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
They'd established on their first entry there wasn't an active monitored alarm system. They knew the contents of the house because they saw things they couldn't take. Evidently, that was more enticing than the fear of the homeowner and his increased awareness.
Yeah. Well, the first time apparently they weren't home, and
they were the second time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's do this. We've eaten up a segment, and we've got a ton more DGU. So let's go ahead and take a break. We got one more set of DGUs. We'll get to those right after this.
These are our low-cal DGUs, so they don't quite weigh a ton.
Okay. And by the way, I don't have a problem in the world with doing two DGU segments because we're getting good discussion out of this.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on a minute. I got an helicopter coming over. Okay.
They're one of those black helicopters.
Speaking of airplanes and helicopters, did anybody see the picture on Facebook at McCarran this
with
weekend?
all those private jets?
It was.
Oh yeah.
They
Dave
sent out a
Spicki
message.
Published it.
It was closed to any new private jets. They had run out of space.
There's no space.
That was great.
And that's saying something for Vegas. I mean,
oh yeah. Well, it's a surprisingly small airport, but it is saying something.
Yeah, they could have went up to Area 51. That's just north of it.
Stop it! Come on.
All right.
Those landing strips aren't long enough. Those are for spaceships.
Oh, okay. All right.
Paul, are you going to read this?
Sure. Yeah. All right. Here we go. Hey, and welcome back to the. Try it again. Hey, and welcome back to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our second DGU segment. Doesn't happen that often, but we do get it every once in a while. We've got enough DGUs. We can take up 2 segments with it. So we're going to get right into it. Our second segment, DGU we're going to get right into it. The second segment of DGU starts off with this one. A his and her burglary team broke into a pricey Salt Lake City area home Monday morning. Alerted by the family's dog, a neighbor called 911, and the homeowner grabbed a gun. At one point, the homeowner fired a warning shot, chasing the duo out of the house and straight into the arms of arriving police. Authorities report that the suspects have previous criminal histories. Big shock there. Now, warning shots are rarely a good idea. The self-defense use of a firearm is usually limited to life or death situations. If the victim has time for a warning shot, almost by definition, that shot cannot be critical. The bullet has to go somewhere, perhaps threatening someone in the home or some distance away, and the victim has thrown away a significant portion of their life-saving device's resources. Quality formal training may have kept the homeowner from making this possible error. That being said, we do commend the homeowner, the neighborhood, and the police for the happy resolution to this home invasion. Do we want to go ahead and talk a little bit more about the warning shots? I think personally they are an extremely bad idea.
I agree with you. What happened with Florida was passing a law that was allowing them? Remember that?
They did pass that law.
It
Yes.
did pass? Okay, I didn't know. That's, yeah. I see no reason, regardless of what the vice president says, for that to be a good idea.
Yeah. Let's just face it. I carry in my daily carry is a standard capacity of 15 plus 1. My Glock will hold 15 rounds in the magazine plus 1 in the pipe, unless I were to be carrying my magazine that I use usually just for show and as a backup for training. I have a 132 round magazine for my handgun that really makes it impossible to conceal but looks badass. But at any rate, if I were to fire one shot, well, there goes almost 10% of my capacity to no end other than to prove that I really am able to pull the trigger. Well, my voice should be able to do that alone. If I were to pull my handgun and use my voice, they'd believe me. I've had enough practice at it. I can make someone believe I am very well able to protect myself just by the use of the voice. No use of the firearm is necessary there. Also, like we mentioned in the story, and Masad Ayub is famous for saying it, every bullet has a lawyer attached to it, unless you have a guaranteed backstop. And it's almost impossible to have inside a home. You are taking a risk of spending the rest of your life in jail because of bravado and trying to imitate something that happened on the television.
Okay, well, there's a way more scientific reason for this. The 4 rules of gun safety: keep your finger off the trigger until your sights are on the target and you're ready to shoot. If you're not going to shoot the bad guy, then why are you taking your eyes off of the bad guy? If you're sighting away from shooting them, then you're not keeping your eye on them. That's the deal. Keep your eyes on the bad guy.
Yep. Let's go one more. I want to take one because this just came in my mind. I want to go sideways one more time here. And I'm really interested in your take on this, Gary. I've been through both ways in training. I've had people say that you don't look at your holster when you're reholstering, and I personally follow the I don't mind if you look at your holster, because I don't think you should be good. If your gun has been drawn, there has been a life and death situation, at least a possibility of a life and death situation that has occurred. If you're putting your gun away, that situation should have ended, and your life should no longer be in danger. Therefore, it shouldn't be a big deal if you look at your holster. What do you think, Gary?
I teach the exact same thing. Look. You see a lot of YouTube stuff with people reholstering quickly. That's another thing, because excuse me, because the draw is an attempt to do that. You're training the draw to attempt to do that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
That people think that they're in the same speed reholstering.
Ooh.
And once again, they're not. It's what rookies do, those kind of things. You see it in the classes. Came out quick, go back in quick. And you really, with some people, you really have to slow them down and say, wait. Everything, if you're putting your gun away, everything's okay. So there is no hurry. There's nothing wrong with looking. I wouldn't stare at it, but glancing down there when you're holstering, of course. If there's a reason why you can't take your eyes off of something to look at your holster for a half a second, don't put the gun away.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Rob, John, you guys disagree with it or want to say anything about it?
I mean, I've been taught how to do it without looking at it, but I think it's, especially if you've got something that's inside the waistband, or more importantly, an appendix carry, I'm going to be wanting to look that in very slowly and very carefully.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were taught to be extremely deliberate when reholstering. As they, it was interesting in the course. The instructor said, "Well, presenting a firearm is dangerous," and then that afternoon, a minute later, they say, "By the way, I lied to you. The dangerous thing is putting your firearm away if you're wearing a concealment garment. You're more likely actually to shoot yourself then. Slow down. Get it right."
Yeah. I think where the don't look at your holster while you're putting the gun away, I think that comes from the police.
Right.
If they have coming up to handcuff somebody, they need their hands free to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they got to put their gun away, but yet they don't want to take their eyes off the suspect in case they need to bring the gun back into use again. But we don't have to handcuff them. We don't have to restrain them. If they get away, that's not our responsibility. Right. If they've gotten away and things are safe and you're ready to go back to reholstering, I don't see a problem with looking. But again, that's just me.
Well, those police you're talking about are reholstering a nice, big, wide, outside the waistband holster, whereas most of us are either inside the waistband or something that is more concealable than a typical police holster.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So it's not the same at all.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next story then. A store manager shoots would-be robber in East Houston. The manager of an East Houston cash and carry was assaulted at the front door of his store Thursday morning. A robber put a gun to the back of his head put a gun to his back and demanded cash. It apparently wasn't the manager's first rodeo. As an underneath package in his arm, he held a legally carried concealed handgun. In that extreme situation, the manager used his gun and put 2 or 3 shots into the chest of the armed robber. The robber died at the hospital. An accomplice may have fled the scene in a getaway vehicle. The robber paid the ultimate price for nothing, as the manager's bag didn't contain the hoped-for cash, instead, only toiletries. To the good, the manager was able to stop the theft of his own life through his foresight and preparedness.
Okay, here's one of those situations. When I saw this article, I thought, somebody put a gun in this guy's back, and he turned around and shot him?
He had the gun, I think it was an appendix carry, and with the guy still behind him, he started to draw and turned and shot him. Yeah.
Wow.
That's wow.
High risk.
Very high risk. My thought is maybe there's a better opportunity. I mean, I wasn't there, but the article said put a gun in his back or to his back. So I mean, I don't know. I mean,
well, there was no doubt that it was justified. Now we're arguing tactics.
Oh yeah, that's 100%. Total tactics. I'm just saying, wow. I don't know. Is that what you guys would do?
I don't know.
I would have handed him the toiletries.
Yeah, that's what
and
I
then
mean.
Run.
It seems like there would be a better opportunity to draw.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. But I certainly, even if I did John's suggestion and handed toiletries, I'm going to draw until he's out of visual range.
Oh,
when
yeah.
the opportunity to draw, it's coming out, and when I'm safe, it'll go back away. Well, our next story, a Utah CCW holder stopped a carjacking at a Macy's in Orem, Utah on Saturday and ended a crime spree. The unidentified CCW holder, a 31-year-old male, had been shopping and came out into the parking lot to see a woman screaming as she was being pulled out of her Mercedes. The carjacker had stolen a truck earlier and was trading cars. The CCW holder ordered the carjacker out of the car, The carjacker then lunged at the man and tried to take his firearm, upon which he was shot and killed. The police are treating this as a legitimate use of deadly force and are not charging the CCW holder. The carjacker, whose name is being withheld pending an autopsy, was wanted on several felony warrants. Police are searching for 2 other accomplices who fled. Anybody want to bet that when they do get those accomplices, that there might be an extended criminal record there too?
I'm not going to take that bet because I think there probably is. I actually wrote up this story, and you know how earlier we talked about the man in North Carolina who shot the guy who was going away. In Utah, this story made clear that it would be legal to use deadly force in defense of property. But nonetheless, he was helping. He reacted to the woman being manhandled, thrown out of the car, and screaming, rather than her car being stolen. It was her that he responded to, not the car.
Right. Was it the assault or the property theft?
The assault, yeah.
Right.
Well, our next one, Houston CCW stops carjacking. Wednesday evening, a man was sitting in his vehicle in downtown Houston when 2 men asked for a ride. The motorist naturally refused, and the 2 men left, but they came back. At gunpoint, the driver was ordered to kneel behind the car. When both men got in, the victim drew his legally possessed CCW and fired at the driver. The 30-year-old carjacker died a short distance away. His accomplice escaped on foot. The case will be referred to the grand jury to determine what, if any, charges will be filed. Now, I know for a fact in Texas, in cases, you can fire for property protection.
Remember the story of, what was the guy's name, Joe Horn? This was a couple, 3 or 4 years ago. He killed somebody on his neighbor's property because he was minding it. Caught him breaking in, and no charges were brought because that's exactly what he was doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once again, I hate to repeat myself, but think about that situation, folks. You know, you guys want to kill somebody over a piece of property?
Yeah. You're going to get far back.
You're not. No one's firing thinking they're going to wound. You know, you're firing to stop the threat, and using a firearm is using deadly force. Do you want to do that for somebody's house?
Yeah. Well, in this particular case, about the only reason I think I would justify it is if the car were in reverse. You know, if they were still trying to, they had him kneel behind the car, they went to get in the car, and then he fired. If they were trying to run him over with the car in reverse, yeah, I mean, while you're trying to step aside, yeah, stop the threat.
Absolutely.
But we weren't there. We don't have all the details.
Right.
Yeah, I generally agree with you, Gary. Absolutely.
Well, I was referring to John's reference to the property. The guy was watching somebody's land, home, whatever it was, in Texas. I was just saying.
Yeah.
Now, if the guy was a horse thief, that's another story, of course.
Yes, it is, especially in Texas. All right, last story we got for DGUs. A hapless New Orleans thief was shot with his own gun after his armed robbery attempt went drastically sideways. The intended victim was having none of this assault, won the struggle for the gun, and immediately employed it in self-defense. Good on the victim for turning the tables on the feckless thief. However, it is usually best if you bring your own concealed weapon rather than relying on the perpetrator to supply one for you. I love getting stories like this simply because, you know, for a long time it was don't own a gun. The criminal will only take it away from you and use it against you. I honestly believe there are more cases of people taking guns away from criminals and using them on the criminals than the other way around.
Yeah. Let me just. Are you guys done with that one? Because I wanted to throw something at the end here.
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. There was a video that was out. A woman walked up to a guy while he was getting gas. Apparently asked him for a cigarette. He said no. And she walked away, and he turned his back on her. She walked 4 steps, turned around, and lit the fumes coming out of his gas tank on fire. Burned up his car.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet. I've seen the post, but I haven't watched the video yet.
Yeah. He was obviously not firm in his conviction to make sure that she went away after he told her to go away, and he really had he had a look. He turned his back on her, and she came back and went in his car, and he pulled. It was horrible. But I just wanted to, once again, carrying, not carrying, whatever you choose to do, always be situationally aware, everywhere.
Amen. Absolutely agree. Oh, I do want to mention we do post each of our news and DGU's articles at politesocietypodcast.com. Please take a moment and share them with a friend. And as we mentioned in the interview, we do post each segment now. If you want to just do one segment of the show, you can certainly do that and share those segments. So we got some emails to go over. We're going to take a break, and then we'll get to that email right after this. Anybody complain? Excuse me. Anybody getting complain if I read the email as well?
Go right ahead.
Okay. Everybody ready for the last segment?
Let's go.
Okay, here we go. Hey, and welcome to the email segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our email segment. We didn't get any email, however, we got a comment on the website, and I really liked this comment, and so I thought we'd go ahead and share it. The commenter said, "Great show. I was surprised to hear that more firearm genre radio programs could not be recalled. So allow me. There is a Lock, Stock, and Daria out of Rhode Island, a local. On Target Broadcasting out of Illinois, also local. GeorgiaCarry.org out of Atlanta, local. Now, these were just off the top of my head, but you all are correct. Gun Talk was the first nationally, keyword, syndicated radio, and it was decades before they were challenged. As with the national media's bias towards gun self-defense stories, that what they are not realizing or are unwilling to realize is that local media has to report such events in their news cycle. What happens is average Joe one night watches local Channel 5 and learns of a single mother with 2 kids suffer a home invasion, possibly ending with death. The following week, average Joe watches the story of an 85-year-old pistol-packing Ethel putting 6 in a bad guy, saving her husband's life. Now average Joe starts to think and begins to talk with friends, and so on and so on. The whole time, the national media sit in their New York bubble believing they are controlling the message. Fortunately, with new gun-friendly media, that is no longer a true statement. Keep pumping them out. I'll keep listening. So great comment on the website. Folks, also, we do encourage email. The email address is on air at politicsandguns.com. If you want to comment on the website, cool. If you want to send us a Facebook message, cool. Any way you want to get in touch with us, we will get your comments on the air if you want us to. Rob, do you have any posts from your Slowfax blog you want to talk about?
I do. I asked the question, how can a business survive a riot? We saw it in Los Angeles, we saw it in Ferguson, and now we've seen it in Baltimore. I've answers from Charles Heller, Dave Cole, Miguel Gonzalez, George Hill, Stefan Wagner, Ben Branham, and Layla Sumners. You can find their answers to that question at slowfax.wordpress.com. John, what have you been writing at your blog, No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money?
Well, I just want to quickly mention two two posts that are actually related. First, last week you will remember we talked about Lonnie and Sandy Phillips. They were the plaintiffs who are now liable for attorney's fees for having sued Lucky Gunner and Sportsman's Guide. We expressed actually some sympathy for them in the podcast last week. We were saying we hope that the Brady campaign might step up and pay some of those fine or attorney's fees. Well, it turns out that they are Brady campaign employees and have been since 2013. He is an operations manager down in San Antonio, and she's a campaign manager. We found one of my readers pointed it out to me, and it led to a very well-read blog post. The last I saw was 3,000 and counting.
Wow.
And I did post the first of my Bad Apple Lawyer series, and I featured Professor David Carries of Temple University School of Law. He developed the public nuisance theory that was used in many of the municipal lawsuits against gun makers. Actually, the Brady campaign or Brady Center Legal Action Project even used that in the Lucky Gunner lawsuit as one of their grounds, that what Lucky Gunner did was a, quote, public nuisance. So, as I said, just like Stalin and Mao needed a theorist like Marx and Lenin, so too do the anti-gun attorneys need a theorist, and that's where David Carries came into play. So he was the first of the Bad Apple lawyers. Both of these posts and more can be found at my blog. The address is onlygunsandmoney.blogspot.com.
Well, I would imagine with that series of Bad Apple lawyers, it's kind of like our DGU segment and our news segments. It's kind of a self-renewing thing where you're never going to run out of material for that.
Probably not. Actually, no, because not only do you have the ones who are doing the lawsuit, you also have the ones who are holding fundraisers for what used to be called Law Center Against Violence. Now it's the Lawyers Law Against for the Prevention of Gun Violence, or whatever they call themselves now. Yeah, all these people giving money. Oh yeah, not going to run out of it anytime soon.
Yeah, Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence. I've debated them.
There you go.
Also, there's now. Whatever happened to? I think they're still around. The Southern Poverty Law Center. Are they still?
They're kind of like the Rocky Mountain gun owners in Nager. They're really good fundraisers, and their head, Morris Dees, lives really well.
Okay.
And, oh yes, you just read Mike Vanderbo's Sipsey Street Irregulars. He points out them a lot because they're gunning for him, he's gunning for them.
Yeah. Well, we would like to, speaking of bloggers, we'd like to thank Charlie Foxtrots for writing up our news and DGU segments. He does a lot of work with that, and he does a great job. And folks, go ahead and slip by his blog. That's Not One More Gun Law, and just Google that. It'll come right up. He's not on the air, and that's by his choice. But he's a big part of what you get to hear on the air. So that does wrap up another episode of the Polite Society podcast. I'd like to thank Jeff Street and Laura Carno for coming on the show with us today. I will be here next week, but not the week after that. Gary, as usual, you're going to be here next week, right?
I will be here.
All right. John, Rob, you guys going to be here as well?
I plan to.
I plan to be traveling next Sunday.
Okay. To a secret location far, far away?
Undisclosed, yes.
Okay. That's good. Travel, that's good. That's a good safety tip. Don't let people know where you're going.
Okay. All right. Well, that does do it for this episode. Until next time, everybody.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
Before we go off the air, I do want to mention our advertisers again: Concealment Solutions, Crusader Weaponry, New Jersey Second Amendment Society, Firearms Safety Institute, and of course, the Firearms Policy Coalition. We're going to go ahead and step aside here, folks. Come join us again next Sunday, 3:30 p.m. Central Time, and we'll be back then.